What's up, guys? We're out here at the Iowa State Fair again. It is the last Saturday of the fair, and I'm with the famous Roger Miller. And I'm told, Roger, you've been out here for 50 years. Is that true?
This 49th year, 50th fair.
Oh, that's incredible. You were telling me a minute ago about you grew up actually here on the fairgrounds before it was the fairgrounds. Kind of tell us about that.
Well, my family had 4¼ acres that adjoined the fairgrounds up on University Avenue. The house is gone because it's now the fairgrounds. They bought it here a few years ago, and part of it became the campgrounds, and part of it then is just access on University. I played in the campgrounds as a kid, enjoyed coming to the fair, sold newspapers when I was about 12 years old out here at the fair. They were, I think, a dime a piece, 7 cents a piece for a Des Moines Register at that time.
What, do you have a early memory of coming out to the state fair? Like, was it love at first sight? Was it something that kind of grew over time? What was it that really got you to really fall in love with coming out here to the Iowa State Fair?
It was something kind of neat. At the 100th year of the fair, they had a caravan come from Fairfield, and it came by our house. They stopped out there getting ready to come into the fairgrounds, and we have a picture of me sitting on one of those covered wagons that they brought up to that, and that was something that really made me enjoy the fair after that, and seeing that, and then being here at the 150th 50 years later was kind of neat.
So you were a teacher for over 40 years, you were saying. As a teacher, how did you come out here and say, hey, I want to start working and volunteering and really being more a part of the Iowa State Fair?
What happened was there was a man that was a teacher that headed up the crew that I now head up. For my first 7 years, he was in charge. And I'd put in an application, and he called me, and the rest was history. His name was Dennis Day, famous name for that time period. But anyway, he introduced me to the job, led the crew until he became an administrator. And administrators have a longer contract, so he could no longer head up the crew. So then I took over.
Nice. It almost makes me think, do you know who Wally PIPP is?
I don't know.
Do you remember that name? So in baseball, it's a term of getting Wally pipped. Wally PIPP basically had a really minor injury, so he was going to take the day off. And he took the day off, and a young rookie came in and took his spot, and it was Lou Gehrig.
Oh, my.
And as you know, Lou Gehrig went on to hold the record until Cal Ripken broke it of most consecutive baseball games played. So I feel like it'd be a great story if there was a guy, Dave, that was sick that day, and Roger came in and just Wally pipped him.
Well, it took years. Things are different now from back then. We have better equipment. We didn't have radios back then. All the phones were landlines. There were no cell phones. It's really changed. We had far fewer golf carts, things like that. I had a 1950 flatbed truck was the first vehicle that I used a lot out here. And you can kind of tell where you are in the pecking order by your truck. And the truck that I've had for most of the last few years, well, two of them, I had an 81, basically a bread truck sort of thing. And I had a 91 two-tone GMC that could hold about 10 people. So those were my two vehicles, while other people have 2016s and things.
So kind of unpack for us what your job, or what would a day look like with you out here. And then also, I know there's basically an endearing name now with Roger's Crew. So what does kind of a day look like, and what is Roger's Crew?
Okay, Roger's Crew is high school and college young people. It's been mostly guys over the years, but we've had a few girls, and some fairs it would be about half girls, because the girls who do the flowers during the summer are gardeners. They cut down to only about 2 people that do go out and water during the fair, late at night, early morning. The girls that come from that, they'll come over and join us during the fair. And anyway, our crew during fair delivers tables, chairs to all sorts of events. Right here where we're at, there are certain days that they need more tables or chairs, and so they bring them or take them away. Like this morning, there's a chili cook-off. Last night, we loaded that into a big truck, 30 tables, 60 chairs. That was delivered at probably about 5 or 6 o'clock this morning. We have all sorts of events that are going on around the grounds. We move things in, move things out. During the summer, we prepare the Culture Center. Photography, we set that up in June. The late July, early August, we get out in the Elwell Food Center, the refrigerator cases. Some are stored in the building, some are stored in the grandstand. We get those into line, get them ready, the electricians hook them up.
Because you're not just here 11 days. I mean, you're here in the summertime, and has this become sort of a full-time, part-time? I mean, I know it's not full-time year-round, but I mean, it's a full-time year-round deal.
Seasonal, full-time, so 40 hours a week, which is the advantage for the young people that work for us. Most of the places that young people work, they get maybe 20 hours a week. Here it's 40 hours a week for the whole summer. And usually the young people are recruited. They almost have to know somebody to work here. So you ask, well, who do you know? And some of them know me, some of them know, like Gary Slater, his kids went to school with a bunch of the young people that I had for several years. As a teacher in some of my early years out here, I had some of my own students because a lot of them lived in the area around the fairgrounds.
So this year's theme is Fair Favorites. Do you have, in 50 years of coming to the fair, do you have a favorite year? I mean, is there a year that really stands out?
Oh, that would be hard to say. Actually, before I worked here, Teen Town used to be an area that was over in the fairgrounds. It's near where Walnut Center is now. And I actually judged the Queen contest because one of my students, a young lady that was in charge of such things at that point, had been my student in my first year of teaching. And she invited me out, and that was kind of a neat event to do that. And then this year, being the Grand Marshal just makes it very special.
Yeah, that's awesome. So talk about that a little bit. You were the Grand Marshal for the State Fair Parade. What does that consist of?
Going downtown and sitting on a Cadillac and riding through the streets of Des Moines waving at people. Like you're screwing a light bulb in.
Any candy coming out of the Cadillac?
Actually, no candy. This parade is a no candy.
No candy?
No candy.
My kids would be
disappointed. We saw kids with bags looking like, what's going on here?
Speaking of candy, do you have a favorite food here?
Most of the time I bring my own from home.
Do you?
But up there at maintenance, they bring in things.
Yeah.
Let's see. We had some, 3 or 4 cheese, some 3 or 4 cheese macaroni, shells that came in the other day. That was really good.
Yeah.
So,
I think it's at the Rib Shack. With the bacon. Oh man, that stuff's so good.
Yeah, Rib Shack. Several years ago, Rib Shack, their first year out here, they brought us up a sampling of their food, and the guys ate, and they came in and said, "Hey, there's more out here." They actually had one of their trucks out there with food and served it for us. The pizza people down here, their first year, they tested their pizza on us. They brought it up. They wanted to see how many they could make in a certain time period, and they brought us up the results a day or so before fair. Steerenstein down here, they went to a different system of ordering, an electronic system. They tested it by having everybody that was working for the state here on the fairgrounds that day come down all at the same time to see how quick they could make the orders. And
Oh, wow.
whatever you wanted. If you wanted 2 steaks, you had 2 steaks. If you wanted double potatoes, you had double potatoes. Whatever you wanted, however you wanted it fixed, because they wanted to see if it worked, which was a tremendous benefit.
Sounds like a perk of the job.
It was. The first time that, they did some remodeling on the old mill, and they tested the old mill by running everybody that was here, running us through, seeing how it went, loaded it up with our crews, and we got to try the old mill out.
So over the years, and certainly we were talking before we came on about how the Blue Ribbon Foundation has made a huge impact in the Iowa State Fair and the state, and really everybody sort of rallied behind there, it seemed like maybe in the early mid-90s. What do you feel like has been some of the better progression or some of the changes that have made the biggest impact on the fair that you've seen? I mean, what do you feel like are some of those things?
Well, the grandstand seemed to be falling apart before that. They renovated the grandstand. It's in much better shape, much better looking. Really did a nice job. Right over behind us here, Youth Inn. Youth Inn was deteriorating. Youth Inn is just a little under 80 years old. It was built right about the time of the beginning of World War II. It had deteriorating concrete. It had just a lot of things that had damaged it. And it's now a beautiful building, really in great shape. We have new buildings.
What is, real quick, sorry, Roger, what is Youth Inn? Explain what Youth Inn is.
Okay, Youth Inn, the top floor of it is a dormitory. It houses, one side is girls, one side boys. My first years out here in the 70s, it was all boys. The upper level would house somewhere 600 young people in bunk beds with a shower room. At that time, it had air vents, but no air conditioning. Now it's air conditioned. We used to have a girls' dorm, which is now the Culture Center. That again was renovated, air conditioning put in.
And are these kids showing? Are they out here working, or what are the kids here doing?
They're showing, and over the years, if you interview anyone who spent time in it when it wasn't air conditioned and it was much rougher conditions, World War II bunk beds were what were in them with Iowa prison made mattresses. Anyway. But you talk to the people who enjoyed those places, and they loved it. One of the best things of their childhood.
That's really cool. You were getting ready to mention something, maybe the Cultural Center. There was something else you were mentioning that was a kind of a key.
It was a dormitory. It was the girls' dorm, and it had, again, had hundreds of beds on the top 2 floors. So.
In terms of the grandstands, do you go to the concerts? Are there shows that you like to see and stuff that comes around?
In all these years, I've gone to one concert there.
What's the one concert?
The one concert I went to was the Carpenters. They're very talented, beautiful music, and
yeah,
I think that's the only one. Normally, when the concerts are going on, that's when I'm working.
Got it. And what is the typical hours of you out at the fair? You were saying.
Yeah, early days out here, we would go from 7 in the morning till 10 at night. And when the person who was in charge of our crew got to, probably 50s, he realized that wasn't a wise idea. And so he divided the crew in half. And we have a morning crew that works 7 to 5, and we have an afternoon crew that works noon to close. And close is usually 9:30, 10 o'clock. Occasionally, with what's going on behind us over here, I've been here till midnight a time or two trying to help set that up. In recent days, they've gone to set up what we can at night, go home about 10 o'clock, and then a crew comes in at about 5 and works on it then.
So the best part of the fair is the people, right? I mean,
exactly.
We were talking since pre-Civil War. I mean, you were saying the fair was 100 years old. I mean, 1857 is when the fair started.
Right.
That's always fascinating to me. I mean, pre-Abraham Lincoln, pre-Civil War, Iowans have been coming together to really celebrate the state, our economy, and the people. In your time coming out to the fair, the people have got to be the best part. Who are some of those people that were very interesting or memorable or made an impact in you while out here at the fair?
Floyd Dietz was the first, the maintenance director, the first maintenance director, or director of plant that I worked for. He actually lived here on the grounds, and he was born here on the grounds because his father, Henry Dietz, had been the director of plant from the 20s up until after World War II, when Floyd came in after his service in the war and directed for quite a few years. And then he directed the fair pretty much as his father had, and it saw a lot of modernization, but he didn't have much money to work with.
What was it? I mean, you don't have much of a budget, so it's got to be really about inspiring people and getting the right people. I mean, how did he motivate people and really preserve the greatness of the Iowa State Fair? Even thinking back in the times where they didn't have the money to be able to do it, but continued to draw people and pull people. What do you think it is about the Iowa State Fair that just people like yourself are passionate about?
Oh, I think a lot of it is that you get to see young people. For me, anyway, it's getting to see young people, see them grow, see them learn how to do things. You hear a lot of people who badmouth young people in work, but we've always gotten really good results. Now, a lot of that is working with them, showing young people how to work. And most young people will dig in and do the work and do it well. In some cases, we've had kids who would say, hey, here's a better way to do this. Let's try it that way. And that's wonderful when you get them to that point. With Mr. Dietz, it was the fact that he trusted the people that worked for him. They picked carefully, and that went a long ways.
Is that what it is for you? I mean, you've dedicated your life to being a teacher. You're out here. Is it about being at the fair, or is it really truly about helping impact young people and giving them skills and opportunities to learn work ethic and passion in that? I mean, what is it that really has been sort of a driving factor for you for the time you've been here?
Just the love of the place, and the fact that if you do things well and do them right, it's something that people enjoy. It makes the place run well. And if it runs well, people are going to enjoy being here. If people don't notice that you're here, that's good, because that means you're doing your job and you're doing it right. And I have young people that out at Newton, Dr. Dan out there, the emergency room doctor, worked here on the cruise. Out in Cambodia, I have a man that's in his 50s now that's a missionary there, one of the few Americans that speaks Khmer. Thailand, another missionary. Anyway, all over the world. There are kids, some of them that I follow. I went to a wedding not long ago where both the bride and the groom worked here on my crew. I went to another wedding a few years ago where the whole all the guys that were in the wedding had worked on the crew. So one wedding a few years ago, the best man and the groom did not know one another before they were on the crew. They ended up being lifelong friends from working together.
That's got to be really, really awesome.
It is.
I mean, that I think that would be it, right? Just the impact and the opportunity to watch, young people grow. And it really feels like the Iowa State Fair is that opportunity to showcase what is great. I mean, you said there's a lot of discussion about things going not well, politics, economy, the youth. But as you're talking, it really is not only a celebration of Iowa, but what makes Iowa great.
Yes, it is.
That's awesome.
And it's one little piece, and it's a few kids, and getting to know them, and getting to lead them and getting to the place that some of the people that help, there are people who help us during fair that have had other jobs. One of the people this year is a painter the rest of the year, and he comes out and joins us. What's impressed him is that you go someplace and you start to do a job, and the guys will go in, and pretty soon they're all working, and they're doing the job, and you didn't have to tell them, do this, do this, do this. They do what needs to be done because they know how to do it.
So in your travels, and somebody brings up the Iowa State Fair and they've never heard of it or they've never been to it, how do you describe it?
It's one of the biggest events. One of the newspapers a few years ago rated events, and of course Las Vegas was tops, but we were in the top 3. And it's just an event that you're going to come to, and if you look around, spend some time, maybe more than a day, you're going to see a lot of tremendous things, enjoy a lot of wonderful food, and probably meet some people that you'll find to be very enjoyable.
What about young families? I know, when I talk to some of my friends, it's, gosh, it's the parking, or it's the heat, or it's just the crowds. My argument is I feel like they miss the really good stuff. You have the little hands on the farm. You get to go see the ag, and you get to see the animals. There's plenty of good food. Now you have the sort of a children's midway. So my son is 4, and I got twin 2-year-olds. And we love it. We absolutely love coming to fair. But what advice would you give to the families that don't make it out to the fair? What would you say to them?
Well, there is an interesting thing. You can come like after the parade. There are people who actually come out here and they walk in free. They can eat the food. They can enjoy. The barns have animals. There is that time that you can come out. In fact, the barn area is up and running a day or 2 before the fair. Awful lot of the animals are here. You can see a lot of the fair, and a lot of the stands are open those days before. That would be a time to and the parking would be free at that point.
Yeah.
The other thing would be for some of the parking, if you like just south of us down here, the neighborhoods. Today, when I drove in, there were $5 and $7, and it would be a place that you could do that. And there are some of the people who park folks that people come back year after year and park, and they end up knowing the folks and spending some time talking to them before and after they go to the fair.
Well, I absolutely love the Iowa State Fair, and what's been fun about getting to do this podcast is meeting people like you, and a lot of people. We've been talking about fair favorites, and I said I want to talk to some of the favorite people of the Iowa State Fair, and your name came up over and over and over again, and now I have a really good understanding of why, and I think the listeners have a good understanding why, and you certainly have become one of the favorite people out of the Iowa State Fair, and of course you would categorize it as sort of the less we're seen and the less we're known, the better we're doing our job.
Yes.
And I think that's what makes a guy like you great. I think it's people like you that have made the Iowa State Fair truly what it is. And this is about celebrating great Iowans. You're a great Iowan, and I really, really appreciate you giving us the time to have this conversation. It means a lot.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah. Thanks, Roger.